So yeah, I'd just like to thank everyone for attending today. Really appreciate it. Just a quick welcome to our guest. So I'd like to welcome. I'm thrilled to have a man whose career in football has spanned over a decade. Seen him play for some of the most renowned clubs in England. Steven Caulker, a former England international and a player who has graced the pitches for Tottenham, Liverpool, QPR, and Southampton, amongst others. Stephen began his professional journey with Tottenham in 2009. His early career was marked by successful loan spells at Yeovil Town, Bristol City, and Swansea City, where he made his Premier League debut. His performance earned him a place in the Great Britain squad for the 2012 Olympics, and later that year he made a memorable debut for the England national team, scoring in a friendly against Sweden. Must have been a good one, that, Stephen. His
Yeah,
time
good
at
feeling.
Tottenham was highlighted by key performances, including a goal against Man City and a crucial role in breaking a 23-year winless streak at Old Trafford. However, Stephen's journey has not been without its challenges. Off the field, he has faced significant struggles with mental health, gambling, and alcohol addiction. These issues began to take hold during his teenage years and escalated as his career progressed. Stephen has been candid about his battles, sharing how the pressures of professional football and personal insecurities led him to seek escape through gambling and drinking. His openness about these struggles has been both harrowing and inspiring, as he has worked tirelessly to overcome these obstacles and rebuild his life and career. Beyond his club career, Stephen's journey then took him to international football with Sierra Leone, where he now serves as national team captain. His recent role as player manager at Malaga City in Spain marked a new chapter in his career, combining his on-field experience with his aspirations in coaching. Stephen's story is one of resilience and passion, overcoming personal challenge to rediscover his love for the game and inspire the next generation of footballers. So tonight we've got a unique opportunity to hear from Stephen himself. We've had so many questions come in that we looked at them and we're just going to fire straight into the Q&A. Stephen's going to answer them, and I think that'll give us a better insight into what we're trying to cover tonight. There's been some amazing questions that have come through. So, Stephen, just like to say thanks so much for joining us tonight. We really, really appreciate it. Been looking forward to this for so much. And just for my personal opinion on you, you're one of the good guys. And you know, straight away when we first met, you could tell you were a sound bloke, proper nice guy. Everything's in the right place, mate. And you know, that's for me the biggest compliment I can pay anyone. That and people say he's just a nice guy. You are just a nice guy, but just is not thing. You're a great guy, mate, and you're such a nice person, and you sort of want to help people. You're open, and I just thank you so much for taking the time to do this for us.
Thank you. Appreciate your kind words. Nice. It's a pleasure. I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to getting started.
Brilliant. Right. So we'll straight into the questions. So this is from Sadek Mardi. How do you support a young player who was being released by a Premier League team at the age of 14? So how would you support a young player that's been released by well, I suppose any team, but Premier League in this instance?
I think the first thing would be obviously to check in on them, because that feeling of being rejected, being told, in other words, that you're not good enough, can be difficult. Regardless of which way the coaches say it, it's often how we hear it. So first thing to do would be to check in on them, make sure they're okay. The second thing, which I write about a lot on LinkedIn, is that it's one coach's opinion, just one coach's opinion. There's so many different coaches out there in England, in the UK, in Europe, that may have a different opinion. You know, we're seeing it right now in the Euros. You'll have Gary Lineker with one opinion, you see Gary Neville with another. So I think it's really important to remind players that don't let one coach's opinion dictate your future.
That's in life as well, isn't it? Outside of football, don't let one person, you know, put you down or spoil your dreams or, you know, let you think negatively about yourself. Football's a great metaphor for life, I think. You know, I really do, and it's something that's helped me, you know, throughout my life. Um, what would your suggestion be to someone that's been released? What would you suggest them to do next in order to try and find another club?
In terms of finding another club, I mean, I just want to touch on the fact that if you are released at the age of 14, or even if you're at the academy at the age of 14, I think it's really important that you have something alongside it. I just do. I know I bang on about it, and at 14, I probably didn't want to hear it. That's the truth. That's why I feel that as a player / ex-player, and those of us on this call, we have a responsibility to encourage players to make sure they do have something there to fall on, because they might not be falling on it at 14, but you might be at my age at 32 and needing your coaching badges or needing a form of education. So if we'll touch on that first, I think it's important that we certainly encourage players to have something else. It doesn't have to be necessarily education, but it can be something along the lines of apprenticeship or something like that. And then secondly, in terms of them finding another club, which of course every 14-year-old football player wants to do, is to find another club. I would say, going on trial is a really difficult thing to do, because I think when you turn up there, you've got a different colour kit to everybody else. They all know each other, they all know each other's names, and you kind of come there on the outside. It can be difficult. So I always encourage players when they go to trials to remember the simple things, do the simple things right. So the simple things for me would be the communication, would be their work rate, would be the aggression in their tackles. Too often I see it when young players come up to the first team. They come up to the first team and they're shy and they're nervous, and it's understandable. And then they forget to shake your hand, and then forget to introduce themselves. And it's like those small details go a long way. Like the players I can remember are the ones who come up, shake your hand, they're vocal on the pitch, and leave a presence. The football part of it is the football part of it. You're going to play well, you're going to play bad. That's just part of life, right? You don't perform well every single day. But I think those small touches, I would always encourage young players, especially when they've been released and they're going to go on trial and they're looking for something new, to make sure that they take those basics into anywhere that they go.
So is that what coaches are looking for as well? Not just ability on the field, but sort of how you carry yourself as a person, and your as you've said, your confidence to interact with people and be a voice on the pitch. Is that another thing that they look for as well?
Absolutely. I mean, none other than Gareth Southgate said it in an interview that I did with him. That he's picking his squad, and he's not just picking it based on ability. It's those who can handle the pressure of things going wrong. It's so important. Look right now, we're in a great moment where we can see it. The players who are able to handle the pressure and the backlash, and England are getting results, but they're not getting the results in the way in which people want, and the pressure's mounting, and it's like he's choosing people based on those who could handle that. And as a coach now myself, I'm also looking for players who have that little bit of something, because I said you can have a good day, you can have a bad day, that's fine, but what's your reaction to that? I think for me the most important thing is the player's reaction, and that's something that I certainly look for.
Excellent. Second question from James Barraclough. Do you think mental health is taken seriously enough yet in academies and at first team level? And I think we can push that down right through to grassroots.
I would say yes. I think that there's a lot of people inside football and outside football that are aware now of the dangers of mental health and what can come if people are not getting the treatment that they need. Would I say it could be handled better and players could be treated better? Yes. I would say it's still very much in the learning process, still very much in the growing process. But I've certainly been on the receiving end of clubs and people who have got it wrong. But I think it's important to remember that every individual is different. So it's not, okay, I've got it wrong with Steven, I'm going to get it wrong with the next one. No, or if I've got it right with Steven, I'm going to get it right with the next one. I think it's important to know that everyone's different, and treat everybody accordingly. So that's where I'm at with it. I just think that there's still an element of players who are struggling and not reaching out, and I think that's because there's still trust issues between players and clubs. They're not sure that it's going to be used against them or whether it's going to be used to help them.
What do you think the fears are then of I'm going to say coming out then, but that is a bit of a term that I've heard said before about about someone's mental health. Is it a fear of literal weakness on the pitch? If they're struggling with the mental health, then maybe not strong enough to make it as a pro. But again, I think what we're talking about does cascade down right into grassroots as well. Is that where the fear comes from, do you think?
Yeah, I think the fear of being dropped, the fear of not getting if you're at grassroots and you want to progress, you've got the fear of not progressing. At any level of football, it doesn't matter if it's grassroots, academy, or first team. You're wanting to progress, right? That's that's your dream, is to get to the top. And when you're at the top, you want to win trophies, and then you want to win the trophies the next year. So I think you're constantly striving for that. And I just think that when you're certainly in my own case, where my mental health was affected, and I shared that, people didn't really know how to deal with that, and I was then sort of dropped from the team, and then as a result of that, my confidence dropped even further, and then before I know it, my contract's up, and I'm leaving the club. So as a result of that, I look back and go, well, I wish I said nothing. I wish I just continued to play. Now, the managers are in a really difficult situation because the owners, it starts from the very top, right? The owners give managers about 5 games to win, and it's like, so if you're a manager sat there today and you've got a Steven who's running through brick walls and feeling good mentally, or a Steven who might run through brick walls or might be struggling with anxiety and depression on the day, typically when your job's on the line, you're going to go with the Steven who's going to run through brick walls for me, week in, week out. So I think that's why it's important that there's other people supporting the managers, and there's other people. There's a safe space away from the coaches. It's too much for the coaches to handle. It just is.
So going off what you said in your personal experience, players are justified really in feeling like that, I suppose, aren't they? Because that actually did happen to you. What players are scared of did actually happen to you.
It happened to, for sure. It happened to me, and it's happened to many others. I get so many people reach out to me in a private space because they're struggling and they don't know who to tell. And I say it quite openly. I don't encourage people to. I know it's a big thing with mental health, like to tell everyone that you're struggling, or tell somebody that you're struggling. But I think it's important who you tell. I really do. And I think that should be encouraged more. As I said, I know there's a big push to talk to someone, tell them, okay, but I just think it's important that it's who. I know clubs now have player care people in place, which is great. I think that's really good. Again, it's a lot though, right? Because it's not like the Premier League have fully supported it. So there's like, it might be one player care welfare welfare officer dealing with, from the academy all the way up to the first team. So again, I think there could be more investment there and more care.
So what, you've probably answered my next question, but what can football do at all levels then to make mental health and make what we all experience something that is safe for people to talk about? What can football do better around mental health?
I think have more support systems in place. I think having more people around the club or outside of the club, and knowing that the players can reach out there and have that, and know that place is confidential. As recent as a few months ago, I was sat listening to people at the very top give an example of how they got information out of a player by using the doctor, and I'm like, that doesn't work. That doesn't work, because all that does is break the trust between the player and the doctor. And I can understand the approach and how and why they thought it would be a good idea, but in reality, it wasn't, because what it does is break the trust and make players feel even more isolated and even more alone. So I think it's as I said earlier, I think it's something that's growing, and we're very much learning, but we've got a lot of learning to do.
That goes against doctor-patient confidentiality as well. That is a big breach, isn't it? That if that's happening, that's awful.
Yeah, but it's been in football for many years. Yeah.
So I suppose like people outside of the game don't see this. You just see the 11 people on a pitch playing. You don't see what goes on behind the scenes, and that is, to me, scandalous.
Yeah, no, it's been used where physios are obviously put under pressure to share the information that they're receiving, but of course it's not safe. So I think that I want to say that it's definitely improving, but it's not where it should be. As I said, this conversation was a couple of months ago.
So this moves on to the next question nicely from Hannah Marriage. Do you think each club or each person within a club should have access to mental health professionals?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Binary answer that, isn't it? Yeah, it's obvious. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
From Andy Jarvis, what is the one thing you've learnt about yourself through your mental health struggles?
Good question. The positive is that I'm stronger than I thought I was. So at times when I thought I couldn't handle it, or I couldn't get through another day, another week, another month, here I am. Many years later, still battling on with it, battling through it. That's one thing. And the other thing I'd say is that it's ongoing. So it's like that's why I mentioned it's like battling through it. Like
Yeah.
it's not something that I just overcome in one day and that was it. Life change was like it's something that I have good days, I have bad days. But I've now developed the tools to be able to deal with things in a better way, in a less harmful way than before, because I would often self sabotage. So those are probably the things that I've learned most. Probably plenty more. And if more comes to me, I will share it
Yeah.
later on.
What you mentioned tools that you've got then. What can you give us some examples of those tools that you use to help yourself?
Yeah. So for me, like I'm in a 12-step program. So I go to AA, I go to GA as well, so Alcoholics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous. But having that as a support network for me is like really important because it's a space where I can go and
Yeah.
share some of the madness that's going on in my head and not be judged for it. So that's certainly a tool that I use. I also write a gratitude list that gives me better perspective because sometimes I need to right size my problems. I
Yeah.
can think that the manager dropping me is the worst thing ever when actually on reflection, wow, on reflection, like a manager dropping me at Liverpool while still earning millions of pounds
Yeah.
is not that big of an issue.
Yeah.
It's one game, it's 1 week, and you still got a contract, still got a house, but it's realizing that I realized that later on. So I
Yeah.
guess having the tool to be, the gratitude has helped, but
Yeah.
outreach as well. Having people, whether that be through therapy or just close friends that I trust that I can reach out to, and they as I say, I use that word again. They like that use the term again. They right size the problems. So not just friends who go, yeah, you're 100% right. What an arsehole he is or she is. Like, no, they actually give me some truth. They hear me.
Yeah.
Sometimes they say nothing, which is
Yeah.
great, and other times they will share back their experiences. So those are some of the tools that I use.
Yeah. The amount of people that I know that have opened up to me about their addictions, it's unbelievable the amount of people that I know now personally that have opened up to me about it. And one thing I say to them, and I'm not just saying this because you're on this call, is like I am so incredibly in awe of people that are living with addiction issues because every day must be a fight and it must be exhausting to every day. Sometimes when you overcome things in your life, it's behind you, isn't it? But what I presume is having an addiction is something that's in front of you every day, in your face every day, that you can't escape from. And it must just be so exhausting physically and mentally and emotionally. And I go to these gym sessions I were talking about, these circuit training sessions. There's about 30 odd blokes all around sort of my age. And most people in the group have got some form of or have had some form of mental health condition. There's a lot of, addicts in there, ex-addiction, and this, I'm just in awe of them, Stephen, that every day they're fighting a battle, and that they're going to be probably fighting the majority of their life, but every day they turn up and they face it. And I don't suppose you have any other way to deal with it, I suppose, and face it every day and tackle it head on.
No, exactly that, and part of my daily medicine would be going to a meeting or speaking to others, and
Yeah,
it helps keep it at bay. It's some days it is in front of my face, as you mentioned, and other days
yeah,
it's at the back of my mind. So it's like I
mm,
prefer it at the back of my mind
yeah,
than in front of my face for sure. One other thing I would mention as well is I don't know how to describe it as a tool. So it's easy to say meditation.
yeah,
Rather than just say meditation, I want to say I give things time, and if I can sleep on it, it's vital. I was always really really impulsive, and I wanted
yeah,
to react to things in the moment. And now, however I find time, so if that's through meditation, it isn't always. I said it's the right thing to say, but it's not. It's not always the case. Sometimes it is. It is just going for a long walk. Sometimes
yeah,
it's listening to music. Sometimes it's trying to get a bit of sleep in. But just give myself that distance between the emotion of what happened and then. Like once that digested and I
yeah.
process the emotions, I react. I respond rather than react.
Yeah, yeah. Is that maybe like sort of part of the how you're wired towards addiction?
Mhm.
It's like that instant. I have to deal with it now, and sometimes sort of you make a decision, in haste. You can repent at your leisure. What my mum always used to say to me, and I suppose that's what you've learned is to stretch that decision out longer. I said to my lad, I said. sleep on it. If you feel the same way in the morning, then you're probably right if you're not sure. And I do that for myself. If I'm ever not sure about anything, I don't make a decision. I sleep on it. And if I wake up in the morning, whatever I'm feeling in the morning, I then know is the right decision or the right call to make, for want of a better term. This is from Simon Elson. Who would you talk to when you were playing if you felt low or lacked confidence?
Uh, Internally at the club, it would usually be someone like a physio, someone like the fitness coach. I'd usually have that's the gym always feels like quite a good place to have that conversation.
Mm,
It's less formal. Um, I'd usually have a conversation with them about something that was going on. I might not share everything with them because, as I said, we've always had that kind of trust issue, let's say.
yeah,
Um, but I would like to share more with them than I would ever would with a coach. And then externally, outside of the club, it would be with a couple of friends, a couple of close friends. But the problem with that is they don't know the ins and outs of the football side of it.
yeah, yeah,
So it's like when I'm trying to explain a football
yeah,
problem,
yeah.
that's why today I think like I look back and I think I wish I had a mentor. I had one for the early years of my career. The late Cyril Regis, and he was incredible for
Oh,
me, and I wish that
fabulous.
I wish that I had one throughout my career. And
Yeah,
it's something that I enjoy doing with players now because most of us are sensitive.
yeah,
We're really sensitive, and we do worry, and we do care about the result. We do care about the performance, and it's like having someone to share that with
yeah.
is I think it's important.
Is that one of your roles at the minute then, becoming offering mentorship to younger players?
Yeah, it's something I enjoy. It's just something
Yeah,
I do like on the side really. But I certainly do. It's like when we analyze the games, we can see certain moments when they made a mistake, how
yeah,
that mistake leads to a second mistake, third mistake, fourth mistake, and it's like addressing that, like what's going through your mind at that moment. I think that's it sounds, I don't know, simple, but it's like that's often what separates the best players
yeah,
from those who don't quite make it.
yeah,
Is those like such small details. It's like
yeah,
Modric. You'll see Modric give away the ball, and then he'll get the ball again
yeah,
and attempt to do a
yeah,
40-yard dive.
yeah, yeah.
Whereas someone who's like me will give away a ball and then not want it again for the rest of
Yeah.
the game.
Yeah,
So I
going
think,
sort of drop it. Them players are sort of, you can see them like the confidence goes and they retreat into the shell, and then they've stopped moving into space. They've stopped asking for the ball. They're not confident to take the ball in case they get tackled or they pass it wrong. And you can see them. Hiding's a strong word, but you know what I mean. You can see them, actively avoiding the ball,
you
can't you?
could see 1,000,000%, and
Yeah,
I would almost go as far as to say hiding.
yeah,
I would use the term
yeah,
hiding. I remember playing against Fernando Torres when he was at Chelsea, and he was hiding. He didn't want the ball.
yeah,
He didn't want the ball. So that same Fernando Torres at Liverpool, who was unbelievable,
yeah,
one of the best strikers in the world, when he was at Chelsea, didn't want the ball, didn't want the chance to miss.
yeah,
Didn't want the chance to miss, and that just shows you it can happen at any level and happen to
yeah,
anyone. And yeah, I just think like there's certain things that we can do to help people through that. Not necessarily cure it. There's a magic cure, and
yeah.
overnight you're going to become confident. But there's certainly little things that we can do to help them.
So like when you're playing against Torres, for example, you could see that in him. You could
Yeah,
see that he's gone missing, for want of a better term. And at that point, are you thinking, I've got him here?
yeah, it's a good
Yeah,
feeling. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. For
yeah, yeah,
me, selfishly, being
yeah.
on the pitch, it's a good feeling.
But that is, it's like
But
winning. You sort of, I was always told sort of win your personal battles as well first. You're generally on a pitch and you've got someone that's your opposite number, and sort of one at best examples I can think is like Vieira and Keane. Their personal battles over the year, they always, and I think a lot of the time, and I heard this from them that whoever came on top in that battle, generally their team won on the night, on the day. And even playing at my crappy standard, I would say you've got to win your own battle first and shut that person up in front of you and let them know that try and make them a Torres if you like. And like I say, it sounds a bit harsh, but that's
I
football,
think,
isn't it?
yeah, on the pitch, that's football. Football is
Yeah,
is a brutal industry.
yeah,
It's ruthless, and if it was the other way around, Fernando Torres would be delighted if he scored
yeah,
a hat trick.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's part and parcel of the game. But I think off the pitch, that's where the work can be done.
Yeah. The holistic nature then needs to come in and help people. This is from Kevin Randall and just says you're friends with his dad Alan, the ex-Spurs scout.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Ronaldo, yeah, yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
yeah. Just thought I'd put that in. This is from Michael Cunningham. in cognitive behavioral therapy, there is a quote that states, if we change the way we think, we change the way we feel. What do you believe is the biggest mental block for those trying to overcome negative thoughts? Good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tough one. What do I think? What was repeat the last bit? What do I think is
So
the biggest?
what do you believe the biggest mental block is for all of us when we're trying to overcome negative thoughts? What do we struggle to get over when we've got negative thoughts going through us head?
I want to speak on behalf of myself, and others may or may not agree. For me, my biggest challenge is getting out of my own way. So it's like leaving the past where it is and
Yeah,
focusing on the day. So being present. For me, that's been a real struggle in being present in the moment. So with regards to the negative thinking, my negative thinking is not usually about today. My negative thinking is about the past or worry of the future. So for me, the biggest issue that I've struggled with is just being present in the
yeah.
moment. That's been the biggest thing that's obstructed my progress.
So like I've sort of read that sort of depression is ruminating over the past and anxiety is worrying about the future, if you like. And is that where you see yourself? Is it like do you don't want to sound too I don't want to go too deep here, but I'm going to ask this question. I get the impression with yourself that you look back and think you see all these players that are playing now, and you were two, three, and four times better than they were, and you didn't get to their level. That's what I sort of from our chats and what I've seen you. That's the impression I get from you that you're seeing players that couldn't wipe your boots now, couldn't lace your boots, that are playing at a level that you should have been playing at.
Yeah, I don't know like about two, three times better than them, but there's definitely players that I look at
Yeah,
for sure and think like,
yeah,
wow, I was like playing alongside or I was ahead of them at some point on the curve. And then like now I'm like nowhere in football and they're like playing for England
mm,
or playing in the World Cup. It certainly enters my thoughts and can
mm.
stay there
Yeah,
if I don't do this
yeah,
use the tools that I'm talking about to remove it. It can stay there and it can really affect me. I can really feel down on a day
mm,
thinking, wow, like regret what opportunities I had and what opportunities I wasted.
mm,
On a positive day, I look and go, you know what, that shaped me into who I am
yeah.
today. But those days are not always,
No,
they're it's a mixture of days, put it that way.
that's difficult though, isn't it? Well, it's so easy to ruminate on what mistakes you've made. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about myself and everyone. To ruminate on, oh, look what I could have done, and I didn't do that. I didn't do that, and it's so difficult to then flip that and say, well, I think, and again, I'm not professing to know you, but I always think that you are where you're meant to be. And I don't know where that is. I just think you have got so much more to give the game than what you probably could have given it had you stayed at the level you were playing at. I don't want to sound too deep, but I just think you've got, I see the response you get when you post stuff on LinkedIn, and that's, sort of a business platform, and the amount of response you get and the amount of sort of influence you have. I just think I think, Stephen, that you will give more to this game than you would have done if you'd have ended up carrying on playing. I do.
I hope so, and I have belief of that I can achieve that like day at a time. Because I can definitely get caught up in thinking I'm going to change the
Mm.
world in one day. It just doesn't work like
Yeah,
that. So,
yeah,
as I said, I start with doing like the one-to-ones and working with players
yeah,
individually, and then started to go into clubs and speak with them as well and offer support and like build it that way. I think that's the best
yeah.
way. But I think you're right. If I'm honest with you, you're right. Of course, there's days where I think, wow, I wasted an unbelievable
Mm.
opportunity to be playing in Euros or World Cup or whatever it may be.
Next question, Michael Allison. When did you feel the most vulnerable?
On the pitch.
Yeah.
On the pitch, definitely felt really fragile on the pitch. I feel when my addiction was really on top of me and like the walls were closing in, I felt the pitch was a really uh, vulnerable place for me to be because you've got 40,000 fans or whatever it may be
Mm.
around you, waiting for you to make a mistake,
Yeah.
wanting for you to make a mistake, singing chance and all the rest of it. That for me was a hard place to be towards the end. To begin with, it was a place where I heard Gaza say and a couple others, it's almost like a place where you go and you forget all your problems.
Yeah.
Towards the end, it was a place where it heightened all my problems.
Right.
And there was no switch off button.
Is that one of the sort of situations that you, when you talk about you wish you had a mentor, is that when a mentor would have come in, good to sort of maybe help you compartmentalize the, what goes on the pitch as to how you're sort of how you're experiencing it and how you're processing it? Is that where a mentor you think would have helped you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think two areas. So one is keeping things simple. So I think it's very easy when you make a mistake or you feel like crap to try to overdo it, to try to overdo
Yeah.
something. You know what I mean? So I'd say that the key lies in the simplicity of it, especially on the pitch, just doing the simple things right.
Yeah.
I'm a centre back, win my headers,
Yeah.
pass the ball, win my tackles. Like I don't need to hit the diags or go on a mazy run, through five players. So I think the simplicity of it definitely. And for me, the other area as well, my mind's just gone blank.
Just sort of, that mentor where, the things were coming in and
Yeah. The other area as well is like, you know what? I really wish I had a mentor at one point to pull me out.
yeah,
To pull me out, to take a
yeah,
breather,
yeah,
because I was not strong enough to do that myself. I felt that I needed to keep going and keep pushing myself. And it's like that's why I think support is so key. Having someone to actually recognize that,
yeah,
what, this guy's struggling. Like if I'm turning up to training drunk,
yeah,
he's obviously got some kind of issue
yeah.
going on. And I feel like there as a mentor, I would maybe step in and pull someone back.
Mm. Can I just say, Stephen, you said then that I wasn't strong enough. With greatest respect, I don't agree with you on that. I think you didn't have the tools,
Mm.
and there's a big difference personally.
Yeah.
Where and again, we all beat ourselves up, and I do it myself. So I'm talking out of experience probably in a different field, to you, literally. But I think it's not a matter of being not strong enough. It's a matter of looking and saying, I just didn't have the tools at that time. Now I do. And sorry, that's just my opinion on what you've said. And I think that as young people, when we're younger, it's easy to think, oh, I should have known that. But we only know what we know, don't we, at the time?
Yeah. Yeah.
I look back, I think, bloody hell, if I knew what I knew when I knew at 16 what I know now, but that's not life, is it? You
No,
know,
it's not. And I think the other thing, you mentioned earlier about like compartmentalizing things. I think it's important that, again, a lot of the work I do with players now is that they don't. So how can I say? Being a footballer is not my identity.
yeah,
That's just part of
yeah,
who I am. When I go on a pitch, that's what I
yeah,
do as a job.
yeah,
But most footballers, if not all of us, take it home with us, right?
yeah,
We just can't help it, which is
yeah,
why I said we're sensitive, which is why Harry Kane and Declan Rice say to Gary Lineker and Alan Shearer, like, stop. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Just stop, because they know what it's like. They know what it feels like. And it's like, um, I used to take stuff very personally. So if I performed badly, then I took that as I'm a bad person. Whereas
yeah,
it's like, no, I had a bad performance. That doesn't make me a bad player. That doesn't make me a bad person. And it's like it's quite difficult to differentiate. I can't say that word.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You
In the moment,
differentiate between the two. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. In that moment, and I
yeah,
feel like, yeah, certainly today I've got the tools to do it, but I still
yeah,
see others suffering.
yeah,
One obvious one who I don't know, so I'm happy to say, because I don't know it on a personal level, but I would look and say Rashford is someone going
yeah,
through that right now. That's just from the outside completely.
yeah.
I would look and go, Marcus Rashford is someone going through this right now. He needs some kind of support for sure.
Mm.
He doesn't become a bad player overnight.
No, just thinking about that, maybe it's a good thing for him that he didn't go to the Euros. Because maybe what the players are experiencing now, had he, maybe not started but come on as a sub and maybe not performed, maybe that would have compounded how he potentially is feeling now. So again, it goes back to my thoughts that things happen for a reason. Sometimes you don't know why, but maybe that's why he's not gone to the Euros. Not that Southgate knew that, but maybe somewhere in the universe and all that stuff, if you're into that, maybe he weren't meant to go. Maybe he needed this summer
Yeah.
to pull himself, to get back to and learn about, who he is. I would have personally taken him, and maybe we'll move on to that at the end, but I would have taken him. I would have taken Grealish regardless. But another question here from David West. I have a few players in my under 12 team, including my son who has ADHD, and this few of them suffer from mental disorders, disabilities. Any advice on how to channel their emotions and reactions to be positive, regardless of the situation in a game? So, thing with ADHD, you can often see everything as a negative. They say that for every one negative thing you see or hear, you need 18 to overcome that. So ADHD, and my son is going through an ADHD assessment, and on the pitch, if he gets something wrong, he beats himself up, and it's awful to see. So I think what David's probably trying to get is how to channel their emotion into a positive, way. If they make a mistake or something happens that they're not happy with or they don't feel should have happened, how can a coach or how can a player, channel negative emotions into positive ones?
Yeah, I mean, look, firstly, I don't qualify to speak on like on behalf of those suffering with
Yeah,
ADHD, so it would just be my like opinion
yeah,
based on if I make a mistake on the pitch, how I deal with it, or if other players make mistakes, how best to deal with it, I should say. So, like for me, when a mistake is made on the pitch, it's one of the worst feelings in the world, right? Because it feels like the light shining on you.
yeah,
And I almost just want the pitch to swallow me up, right? So how I would then like process that in the moment, because that's I guess what he's asking me in that
yeah,
moment on the pitch right then, is I then have to always think about my next pass. So my next pass, my next action,
mm,
I want to make it as simple as
yeah,
possible. So I use this a lot with all the players, and it's like it sounds like I'd want 11 players running on the pitch playing simple football. Absolutely not. It's like that first step after making a mistake, that to be able to encourage someone to do the simple things right. And as a coach, I would then encourage that. So I
yeah,
would then encourage the first pass I'd over encourage it in a way.
yeah,
I would really be
yeah,
complimentary around it and rebuild it like step by step. As I said earlier, I think we often see it. Teams concede a goal, then they concede a second goal because they concede one, and they all the world comes crashing in. They start chasing, and I think it's really important in those moments to be disciplined and to be patient and go, okay, take a deep breath.
yeah,
You're walking back. You're waiting for the other team to finish their celebration. Take a deep breath.
yeah,
Okay, let's do the next thing right. And I think if we do that step by step, pass by pass, the confidence will come back and you grow back into games.
yeah,
So I think it's important as coaches we also don't panic because
yeah,
so much of as players we look at the coaches for their
yeah,
body language.
yeah,
Yeah, we look at towards the coach all the time
yeah,
and see how they're when the coach has got nothing worse for me than the coach with the hands in the air. There's nothing worse
yeah,
because as a player you've made the mistake. I think it's important as coaches on the sidelines that they don't show that.
yeah,
I do like Big Ange for that reason. It doesn't seem to show any
yeah,
emotion whether
yeah,
they score, lose, whatever.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? It
yeah,
seems to just be. But I get that approach because it's just like okay,
yeah,
and you feel with the coach. It's
yeah.
important.
I see that in grassroots. You see like a coach on sideline and they're going berserk. They're shouting and bawling and they're really animated and things. And I think, there's a time to maybe try and get your players G'd up. But as you said, there's a time then when you've got to sort of read the room and they'll be looking at you for a bit of calmness, a bit of confidence, a bit of, just like that. And I just think, and again, it goes like parents on sideline and carers and people, spectators at grassroots. They don't see what effect they have on the players, and these are kids a lot. You're from like start under fives, and they're shouting and bawling on sideline. And I think, can't you see what effect this is having on them? The kids, it's football. Let them enjoy it. And I hear what you're saying about Ange Postecoglou. I think he's like a really cool, calm character, and he's really measured in what he says as well. Like I saw him on TV the other night for the England game, and he not once did he tear into anyone. He was very calm, very measured, very cultured in what he said, and you could see all the other pundits were looking at him and taking in how he was. He's really, he don't seem someone that flies off an handle. Don't Ange Postecoglou, if I can say it.
Not
Um,
yeah, not on camera anyway.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
how
Well,
it
I
goes. But
suppose, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
This is from Adam Lowe. Did you ever feel like no matter how hard things are, but when you step on the pitch, it feels like a different world?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier
Yeah,
at the beginning,
at the
yes.
beginning.
At the beginning, definitely it was a safe place for me. It was a place where I went on. I forgot about everything else that was going on. But then towards the end, it was too much.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to this with next one from Maria Lai. How did the coach's behaviour at grassroots level impact your thinking in your professional career?
Um, well, grassroots level, I had a really, really passionate coach, and he'd be someone who's passion would lead into aggression,
Yeah.
and it would be like fighting with the other staff and other
Yeah.
teams, whatever, the parents and stuff. And to be honest with you, as a player, it we're kind of passionate. We were all just like in it together, wanting to
Yeah.
win. I look now and I think it's completely unnecessary and way over the
Yeah.
top. But I think at the time, if I'm honest with you, it just fueled me even more to want to win.
Yeah.
That's what I felt. That's my honest opinion on it. And I guess as I then went on, progressed through the ranks and got to academy level. What I liked was I could always talk to him. I could
Right.
always go back and speak to him. Even once I made it pro, I always had that as him, and it was like it's like he took on a role as like another dad almost, And it was like I think that's important from the age of like 7 or 8 when I started playing with them, all the way until I was like 16, 17
Yeah.
and making it pro. I was still able to talk with him and yeah, and I just think it was nice. That was actually quite nice for me to have that
Yeah.
away from the pressure of senior football, to have that
Yeah.
space there in grassroots.
Brilliant. This is for Andrew K. What was the best dressing room culture you were in, and how was that created?
For me, Swansea was definitely the best. Swansea, first year in the Premier League, it was a dressing room full of characters, and
Yeah.
like Brendan Rodgers was the manager at the time. He just allowed us to be ourselves. We had a lot of freedom. He took us to Tenerife when there was like a gap. It was like no game in the weekend, so like two
Yeah.
weeks in between. Took us to Tenerife, and we were allowed to go out, and it was just a great time, like bonding with all the boys, and everyone wanted to play for each other, and it's amazing. Like for example, we were out drinking so much at the time in Tenerife, but we came back and we won the next game 3-0. And it's like, I know sports science is a huge thing today, of course, but it's like sometimes just bringing the boys together,
Yeah.
taking a breather, in a very relaxed environment. It was nice, and Klopp did the same thing at Liverpool. Took
Yeah.
us to Tenerife as well during the season, and said, "Bring your families, bring your friends, go out and enjoy." So it's like I just think that's a tool that's used by quite a lot of managers. It's hardly spoken about today
Yeah.
because of sports science, but I'm not knocking sports science. It has its place, but I definitely think the morale of the team is number one.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's not talked about because it'd just be all over the news, wouldn't it, in a negative way? Because if they then went and lost the next game, it'd be Brendan Rodgers takes his players out on the piss and they lose 3-0, for want of a better term. Sorry for the language. So what were best coach you played under?
Best coach I played under. Well, I said the other day Malky Mackay purely because of how he made me feel. I was
Yeah.
21 years of age. I'd left Tottenham. I went to Cardiff. It was their first season in the Premier League, and he gave me the armband after like 4 or 5 games, and
Yeah.
I knew he trusted me. Jimmy, I knew it. I felt it. It was more than just words. It was in his actions. It was in every part of how he treated me, and I responded so well to that because I felt loved, felt wanted, felt trusted.
Yeah.
So certainly in terms of how I felt, Malky was the best. But then tactically, I've worked under some geniuses for sure. Jurgen Klopp being one of them. Francesco Farioli, he's now at Ajax, just taken over Ajax, another football genius. So Brendan was top as well.
Yeah.
So there's so many. But yeah, I've had a lot of good experiences, and I tried to take a little bit from each of them.
Did you take any of that into your Malaga then, player coach? Were a lot of things that you took into that?
For sure, yeah, a lot of things, and also like all the judgment I've had on coaches for 15
Yeah.
years just dropped out. That's it. I changed my tune. I realised that actually it's really, really difficult when you've got to manage 20, especially as a manager, right? You've got to
Yeah.
manage 25 players and you've got to
Yeah.
manage the staff
Yeah.
because that was something I never even considered. You actually have
Yeah.
to manage the staff alongside it, and then you've got pressure from the board above you.
Yeah.
It's hard to find time, So definitely it was a really good experience. I want more of it, but
Yeah.
I certainly realised that it's something that you have to like be able to manage your time because
Yeah.
outside of it, I need my time for sure. I need my
Yeah.
time. I need my family time. I need my time.
I think like people don't appreciate that, like you said, a manager is a manager, literally. As you said, you're managing all these players, all these staff, parts of the club, where a coach, I suppose, if you're a coach or an assistant, you're not managing, you're literally coaching on the training pitch. Your head's filled with plays, drills, etc. As a manager, your head's filled with that. And like Malky was with you, how do I how do I manage players individually as individuals and not as one unit? Were you the type of player that needed a hug or a kick up the arse?
I needed an arm around my shoulder
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, yeah,
I don't know many players, in all honesty, that need to kick up the arse.
yeah.
I don't. It's almost like a myth, like we shout at the player plays well second half, and it's like, oh, that's what he needed, was a kick
Yeah,
up the arse. But it's very rare that I see it, because all that happens as a result of it is the player resents the manager the next
yeah,
day,
yeah,
So it's I know it's old school, and I'm not saying it hasn't got a place, but I would say I'd be very mindful of
yeah.
what place it has in football, because I don't know many players who
No.
long term respond well
Yeah,
to being spoken to like that.
yeah. I think like I say, maybe the word is old school, isn't it? And things that maybe because people didn't know any better, I suppose. I want to say back in day, whenever the day was. Again, it goes back to what I said: is you only know what you know when you know it, don't you? And back then, maybe psychology maybe wasn't as big a part as it, unless you maybe look at like Fergie, for example. He was a master psychologist, I think, with his players, and things I've listened to and read and seen about what he did and how he did know when to hug or when to kick up ass, for example. He seemed to be sort of a master at that. Did Ferguson. So maybe it is a sort of sign of the times where things are changing in society and in football, that giving someone a bollocking is no longer the right thing to do, because it never has been. But previously, it was thought maybe that it was.
Potentially, like, I'm not here to say it
No.
hasn't got a place, and some
Yeah,
players, potentially do respond well to it. But if I'm only talking from my own experience, long
yeah,
term, I've yet to see it be beneficial.
yeah,
I see it as players start to resent the manager, and as
yeah,
soon as that happens, they come against. As soon as the dressing room goes the other way, it can be a difficult place.
yeah. From Graham Fletcher, what advice would you give to someone who is fighting mental health or addiction in silence?
Speak to somebody you trust, for sure. Speak to somebody you trust. And before you do that, you could do it either way you want. But an option to do before would be to go online. You can type in Alcoholics Anonymous,
Yeah,
find a meeting. Gamblers Anonymous, find a meeting. There's local meetings everywhere. There's online meetings. I just think it's so important to have conversations with like-minded individuals who are not going to judge you. Um, and then I think from there you could then have a conversation with a family member or a friend that you trust. But I'd certainly say speaking to someone is important. But as I mentioned earlier, that's somebody, choose wisely.
yeah. Um, this is from Hammond Panga. What stage of your career made you feel like an outsider the most?
When I was at QPR, after I spoke publicly about depression and addiction, when I went back into QPR, it was really, really awkward,
Mm,
really, really awkward, and I felt, yeah, worst I'd ever felt, really.
yeah,
I didn't last long there. I think I stayed like another 6 months and left, because it was an uncomfortable environment.
yeah,
You're going back 7 years. So I think, again, I mentioned earlier the progress football's making. Yes, it's still got more progress to make, but it's made a lot. In 7 years, it's made a
yeah,
hell of a lot of progress. 7 years ago, like, it was like, what are you talking about? I was the first current player to ever speak. Player spoke at the end of their career for a reason, you know.
yeah.
So that was probably the most challenging
Yeah.
period.
7 years, isn't that long? I know you're saying football, but like, sometimes when you talk, I sometimes when you say like, saying, oh, I felt uncomfortable and it was 7 years ago. So I can see you trying to sort of be nice to, or, try and be understanding around the people that were at QPR and not, castigate them for what happened to you. But I also think, Stephen, we're not talking, 1980. Then it would be like, I'm not criticizing. I think it's great that you're not hitting them head on, and say you're actually sort of defending them to a certain extent, aren't you? Just a point I'm making is you're only 7 years ago. Not in days of Kenny Dalglish and Graham Souness, where they were
I
smoking in
agree.
changing rooms and sharing a bath.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree that 7 years isn't that long ago, but I just think that society has changed
Yeah,
so much,
yeah,
like, so quickly. And I think now, it's, for example, the managers. How did the managers know how to deal with it if they never experienced it themselves?
yeah,
It was the B license, the A licenses were much shorter than they are now. So now it's like, if you go and get your A license through the FA, it's a year-long course, a very, very intense course. Whereas before they were just signing people off.
Yeah.
So now it's like you need to. The first 3 days of, well, I've just done it recently. The first 3 days of the course was so heavy on dealing with players' emotions, dealing with
Right.
players mentally, physically, all of that kind of stuff. Dealing with the player before the tactics even started.
Yeah.
It was all about that. So I'd say it's progressed. It's progressed quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose that's right though, because if you're not if you can't work on them, on the mental side of it with a player, whatever you ask them to do out on the pitch is going to be totally pointless, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what I've always struggled with. We're certainly like with England, going back, 10, 20, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, when you could see that, in certain areas, in certain situations, the confidence was low and the sort of mentally had blockages. And I always thought, why have these like football clubs and England and other internationals that have got vast resources financially not brought in psychologists to help the players with because I think what I've read is, football's 95% up here and 5% in your feet, for want of a better term. But they seem to be putting 95% of the resource into the feet and only 5% of the resource up here. And it don't make sense to me.
It's oh no, like I said, it's definitely changing for sure.
Yeah,
It's definitely changing. It's not that far the other way. It's not 50-50, but
yeah,
it's certainly
yeah,
like going towards 20% now. They're realizing that actually a player
yeah.
needs to be well mentally and emotionally in order to perform to the best of their ability.
Yeah. That's what Southgate seems to do well for me. He seems to be very good with the players and he seems to be very good at understanding them and he seems quite a nurturing sort of manager and
He's
coach to
he's he's,
Southgate.
he's excellent.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
excellent at
So
that side of things.
yeah.
Absolutely excellent.
So wishes from Caroline Meredith is that who was the toughest opponent you faced?
Toughest opponent. I always give two names for this. One would be Zlatan. Zlatan was yeah, so good. Lived up to his name, lived up to
Yeah,
expectation. And then the other one would be a complete contrast in terms of style of play would be Aguero.
yeah,
So Aguero always playing on his shoulder, so clever, didn't run too much, but knew when to run and certainly knew how to score. So I'd go with them two.
best player you played with?
Um, Best player I trained with would be Modric for
Yeah,
sure. Just genius, absolute genius. And then in terms of on the pitch, I'd go with Gareth Bale.
yeah,
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 that's tough though. I've played with like so many top players. Coutinho, Gerrard would be up there as well. But
yeah.
I'd go with Bale as that year at Tottenham. He was just phenomenal.
Fabulous. Right. So last sort of 10 minutes or so, I just wonder if we could just have your take on the Euros. Well, England and Scotland, really. What you think has gone right, what you think has gone wrong. Obviously, the Scots are out. They had a bit of a, I don't know, difficult to say really. What do you think about the Scots first? Obviously, you
I've
spent
got
some
to be,
time up there, didn't you, as well?
Yeah, I've got to be careful. I see
Yeah.
Tracy on this call, who's under the name of John. I see her on the call, so I'll be very careful what I say about Scotland. What do I think? Scotland, yeah, Scotland for me, like they disappointed me. I think individually they have some really good players, and I felt that they never really got going. I think they actually started the game against Germany
Yeah.
quite well.
Yeah.
I thought that first 10 minutes, I actually
Yeah.
thought, you know what, they looked up for it. They looked
Yeah.
up for it, looked ready. And what happened happened. Goals change games, and the one goal and everything starts to change. And but I felt certainly against was it Hungary in the last game. I was wanting more. I was
Yeah.
wanting more. I know they left it late. Both teams were leaving it late to really go for it. But
Yeah.
I just felt Scotland on paper the better side than Hungary,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And I just felt I would have liked to have seen them go for it a bit more. That was my take on Scotland. England, they got the job done. Again, they haven't been performing well. I think how they started. The first 30 minutes
Yeah.
were unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they were really really good. Serbia were poor. I thought it'd be 3 or 4 nil at that point. But I just think that England now are listening to what's being said. I
Yeah.
think that the last game when I watched them play, it was it was quite. I don't know. I feel like I could see it. You can almost sense the
Yeah,
fear in them.
yeah,
You could sense it. You know, a lot of them getting in the areas and passing back, and it was the substitutes when they came on. They seemed to come on with less fear, probably
yeah,
because they weren't the ones who'd been slated. They were the
yeah,
ones who'd been called for as they're going to be the hope and
yeah.
saviors. So probably that's why they came on with much more freedom to express themselves. But um, that's my take on England. But don't write England off. That's what I would say. I'd say don't write England. I actually think England playing Holland would maybe have been a better draw because we
Yeah.
at the moment England are playing teams that sit back.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like that's what England are seemingly finding difficult to break down.
It's like I think, like you said, they sort of they seem to be listening to the noise now, don't they, England, or hearing it, shall I say? You know that sometimes it's in the background, but you can see they seem to be taking it in, and then they're responding to like what Lineker said and Shearer, and I think both Lineker and Shearer had valid points myself, and I think what Gary Lineker said were really sort of considered and measured, and Shearer were a bit more emotional. You could tell her a bit more frustrated, as probably a lot of England fans were and are. So what do you think it is then? You think it's with the sort of it's a confidence thing with it at the minute. So we're talking up here rather than down there.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say so. You mentioned earlier football being 95%. I'd say
Mm,
upstairs. I'd say at the moment it's certainly in the heads. A lot of their
mm,
heads how they're performing. But having said that, they've got out the group again.
yeah.
I don't like all the criticism of Gareth. I just don't
No.
agree with it. I remember the era before Gareth. I was
Yeah.
part of that era before Gareth, and it wasn't pretty. It was far from pretty. We were awful, and that was with a golden generation.
Yeah.
So I think since he's come in, I think
Yeah.
England uh, they've set the bar high,
Yeah.
right? They've set the bar high, and I think that's why now, as fans, we're looking, going, well, you're not performing it to the level that we know you can. So I get the frustration, I get it, and I'm not here to say that it's that the fans are wrong. I see it. I just think let's have a little bit of patience. Let's
Yeah.
see what happens against Slovakia.
I think I
Um,
agree. I think this is first time that they've gone under that bar, haven't they? And I think we're so used to them doing better than what, like I say, the previous generation and the previous generation have done. I think we're all expecting them to go out, steamroll teams, play brilliant Barcelona-esque football every game, and that isn't international football, is it? But knowing Gareth like you do, how do you think he'll be approaching this? Probably the toughest period in his tenure. How will he be approaching? I always impression I get about the manager is that it's never about him; it's always about the players.
yeah,
In a positive way that he protects them and it's all about them. What will he be doing with the players now? How will he be getting them ready and bigging them
trying
up?
to trying to shut out all the outside noise will be the
Yeah,
first thing. Absolutely. I think a big part of why Gareth sticks with the players that he sticks with, when often people say change it, is his loyalty to the players, his trust in the
mm,
players. Now, I don't get why no pundit speaks about that, but it's such a key part of being a manager, right? Is
mm,
that Phil Foden knows that he's not just going to throw him under the bus after
yeah,
one bad performance.
yeah,
That's so important as a manager, as well as a player, that
yeah,
you know what, if I don't play well today, I'm not just going to get thrown out
yeah,
of the team. Yeah, and that's why I think Gareth sticks with players. And no one mentions the fact he's stuck with Maguire, and look where
yeah,
Maguire is
yeah,
today, you know?
yeah,
So Maguire's come through that,
yeah.
and no one else stuck with Maguire.
No,
Nobody else stuck with Maguire.
no,
And there's a few examples like that. So I think that the players know they can trust him. They know that he's going to back them. They
mm,
know that. He knows that. I think they'll be shutting out the noise. And I think what would do England the world of good is some goals. I think
yeah,
2-3-0, get Harry Kane on the score sheet, get a couple others, chipping in with goals, and I
yeah,
think it will release a lot of stress and a lot of. I mean, they're still in a
yeah,
good position. I mean, who cares how they got there? They're
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's 90 minutes.
yeah,
Anything can happen. But I think the positive for me is that good teams win games when they don't play well.
yeah.
And England have only won one, but they've got through. They've got
They've
the
got
points
results,
needed.
haven't they?
They've got
Yeah.
results, and they've got through when they haven't performed nowhere near what they're capable of doing.
Where do you think they'll end up?
I think this game will be the biggest decider. I think if we win this one, I think we'll go all the way.
Right.
And obviously we don't win it, we're out. So, but I just think this will be the biggest hurdle. I think with all the pressure
Yeah.
mounted on the shoulders, I think win this, it'd be a big sigh of relief and go all the way.
So we win on Sunday. Steven Caulker says England are going to win it.
That's it. Quote me on it.
I'm gonna do. I'm
Yeah.
gonna. Well, it's recorded anyway. I'm gonna wait, and I'm gonna send that to FA. So
Right.
Stephen, thanks so much for this. Before we go, has anyone got anything they'd like to say on the chat or anything? Open your mics up before we depart.
Just a quick one, just question. Obviously, with Phil Foden going home for family matters. I think it's having a baby. I think that's a good reminder to everyone that like footballers have a life outside of football as well. But in terms of for yourself, like having been there and been a player, how for them, like, do you think that people sometimes forget that?
Yes, all the time. People forget that every single time, and I think it's testament to Gareth, who's given him permission to go again. He's a people person, and so it's testament to him to go home. I remember it was with Sterling a few years ago as well when he had to go home as well. So it's like it's a reminder that the people are human. They've got players are human. They've got families at home that they want to take care of, and that comes first. That comes before everything.
I think that's sort of what's. Thanks, Hans, for that. I think like what Gareth's done for Phil is similar to what Ferguson did for Ronaldo when Ronaldo's dad was dying, and they had a massive game at the weekend. And I think he just said to him, he said, "Boss, my dad's not well." He just said, "Go." And Ronaldo still talks about that now. So just not that I need to back up what you're saying, but that from probably one of the greatest players in the world, as what Ferguson did for him is he showed he just treated me like a human, and I think that's what we are.
That's what I mentioned earlier about Malky. Is like you remember how the managers and coaches make you feel.
Brilliant. Well, Stephen, thanks so much. Bang on time. Didn't want to keep you any longer than that. So really appreciate you doing this. Thank you. Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. Stephen, I could have talked to you all night. I love stuff like this. Talk about football and mental health. It's my idea of a great night in. So thanks again, Stephen. Really appreciate it. Amazing. Cheers.
Thank you. No, thanks for the opportunity. And I hope you enjoyed listening. I enjoyed the conversation, and I hope that we celebrated England's victory on Sunday. So enjoy your evening. Enjoy the sunshine. I'll speak to you later.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Cheers.